Hello, everybody, and welcome to the October 1st Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling. He's Richard Migliore.
And it feels like October up here on the set. It finally turned a bit. Maybe we'll start seeing some leaves change colors, but we got a lot of races to look at today.
We do. A lot of good racing going on here at Belmont Park. And we're going to start out in the turf course. And we're going to go to last Wednesday. That was September 23rd. The fourth race and the one, Riviere de Loup, a horse who, well, I kind of want Richie's opinion. But, you know, I keep coming back to it. Richie, we were talking about it on the show yesterday, Jason and I. People have different contributions. You're getting your position going forward is something I'll always remember about you, and it's the most efficient comment that applies to so many races I've ever heard.
Well, thank you, and I think it is to the point, though.
It
right?
is.
Yeah. I think, though, and I'm going to try to be fair here, Jose Lezcano on Riviere de Loup, is that?
Riviere de Loup, I'm going to assume.
Okay. I think his fate was a bit sealed when he just didn't jump with it at the break. He was a little lackadaisical, and I actually think he ran a little bit to that empty space out of the chute, and by the time he grabbed the bit and started taking him, everybody else's positions were established.
I think that's a very fair comment. I think you're absolutely right. It wasn't an easy situation. It's not like he took him back, and it's kind of when you break that quarter length slow, it'll end up looking like you broke a length slow as the horse kind of takes himself out of the race, and Jose did do a good job of getting him into the race. He was also victimized, I think, by his rail post in the break and victimized by his rail post in general because it didn't give him the options he needed in this race.
Right, and right here, you know, you're looking at what's going on in front of you and who am I going to follow? Who is live cover? Think about harness racing, right? They always talk about live cover. Well, it's the same thing with thoroughbreds. They're just not dragging a sulky around. And I think when the horses...
These are the first two finishers.
Yeah, they've got clean run. Now, they're losing some ground, but they've got momentum now, and you're going to see here, Jose has to steady there. The horse kind of took a little bit of a bobble, and now he's going to have to come out over heels and follow the wake of the two horses that basically have sealed the race at this point.
And they've got their momentum going, and he's got to regather himself. I think it was remarkable that he regathered himself as well as he did and actually made a run for second in this race. And if things had worked out, he probably would have won the race. And I think this is a good example of what we talk about of a bad ride versus an unlucky ride, and this was more of an unlucky ride.
Absolutely. It was an unlucky ride. And then you could try to do everything correct after that, but if you've got horses in front of you that aren't going on carrying you, you're stuck behind them when that wave comes and the race is over. He did remarkable to almost be second.
No, he really did. And it tells, you know, at Belmont, that's why, you know, we talk about saving ground, but sometimes, and this is not applicable in this situation because Jose was dealt a bad hand, but you don't want to get too caught up with saving ground because you're not going to lose that much by going wide, especially if you save a little ground in the turn and you swing wide late on the turn.
Well, the interesting thing about saving ground is you usually want to save ground when you're on a horse that's third or fourth best, and you got to cut corners and take edges and hope you get lucky. When you're on a horse with run, get him in the clear and let them run.
No, you got to get out in the clear, and that's what happened with the first two finishers. We're going to take a look at the fifth race from September 23rd next, and we're going to look at some first-time starters in here and a horse, Firestar, who has some trouble at the gate, but we want to talk about horses' starts and what we think is relevant and what is less relevant. He jumps up at the start, though.
Yeah, he kind of hopped at the start, brushed the inside stall, and got off much like, you know, a horse will that hasn't run, although he had run. So maybe he's just got a little bit of gait habits.
Now, you see him jumping up at the start, the 4.
Yeah.
The horse who breaks worse than him, though, is the first-time starter for Bruce Levine and Roddy Valenti, and that's the 6-horse Barbie Stones. Another horse who breaks a little slow is another Bruce Levine first-time starter, and that's Sabrina Ballerina, who might have run the best race of anybody. What's interesting is the only comment in the chart is that the start was good for all but Firestar, but it wasn't good for Barbie Stones, and I'm not sure why they chose one distinction over the other, Richie.
It is kind of interesting how they'll single out one horse for that, you know, comment with a poor start. And then there's been some that I've kind of looked at that I don't agree with, that I don't think they're as egregious as the chart makes it out to be.
I totally agree. Now, while we're talking, Sabrina Ballerina, who broke a step slow, has rushed herself up to the front. She's actually in the lead. Now, Firestar's well back here and gets an exceptional ride, by the way, by Arad Ortiz afterwards and ends up second. Barbie Stone's back here with John Velasquez. You're going to see in the stretch that she's very green, kind of giving him fits in that race and causing him some problems, and ran maybe a little better than it looks. But isn't it Sabrina Ballerina the one who ran the best race of anybody?
That's who I want out of the race. And she was able to show that speed in spite of not breaking well because she was out in the clear. She didn't get hit with the kickback, and then she ran on. But she did all the dirty work, and I thought hung on remarkably well. This race is kind of something for everybody. You've got the eventual runner-up Firestar, broke slow, slowly, and then got a great trip after that. And you could see the difference between having run before and handling the kickback. Then you've got Barbie Stones, who is completely lost with the kickback, jumps up and down, doesn't settle at all until inside the quarter pole, and then kind of is never in a comfortable spot.
Never comfortable. You can see, I mean, John Velasquez would like to obviously get her outside, but she's not cooperating. She's lugging in on him. She's giving him fits, and Johnny's finding a way to go forward with her. Now, a little bit of the closes by these horses, a little bit illusory, because as you'll see, the race comes together at the end, and that makes Firestar look better, and maybe Barbie Stone's a little, but considering Johnny could never really ride her like he would have liked to, I thought she ran very well.
Well, she ran well, and she also, you got to factor in how much experience she got out of this race and how much better she should be for the experience next time. She should break better. Even though she may not have speed to be up on the pace, she's going to take kickback better. She's already negotiated traffic. She should be a much better horse second time out. Getting back to Sabrina Ballerina, though, she didn't let go until well inside the 8th pole, and she had a right to stop sooner than that. That's who I want out of the race.
I agree, and all the thing is we're talking about the race coming apart at the end and bringing the other horses in. Well, didn't that happen because Sabrina Ballerina blew it open in the middle of the race? So she's the one that actually broke the race apart, and she still ran pretty well to be 4th, and I think she's the one that'll get the least attention of the 3.
Well, I agree with you, because people look at the trips of the other two and go, well, they had tougher trips. In actuality, I really think Sabrina Ballerina had the toughest trip.
I completely agree with you as we move forward to our 3rd race in the show, and this is the 10th race from Thursday the 24th, and Chad Brown had a couple firsters. Now, Anna Creek, the 11, finishes ahead of the 9, Amaze Me Grace, but it's Amaze Me Grace that Richie and I would like to talk about in this race.
Well, Amaze Me Grace breaks slowly, kind of hop to, not really getting with it, doesn't understand what's there. You can see in the beginning, Javier Castellanos kind of asking her, go forward, go forward, go forward, and then when she figures it out, she grabs the bit and takes him up in there, and then he's got to tap on the brakes, and she comes off the bridle again. Like riding in a car with the emergency brake on.
Yeah, you know, I really liked what you were saying to me when we were getting ready for the show and talking about this race. The difference between horses that work in the morning and horses that get in races, and why, and you could talk about this more now, why it's so important to get races into horses and how much different it is than mornings.
Well, if you work behind horses in the morning, you can see she's taking him now, right? We're kind of in the bridle, pulling him up, and he's going to have to just steady a little bit, where a horse with experience probably would stay in the bridle. She's going to kind of kick it back to him, and then he's got to work to get her back in the race. You work behind one horse in the morning, maybe 2. It's very controlled. You're going at a different pace. Now you've got a young horse that's looking at 8 or 9 horses' tails in front of her, and it's a completely different and much more intimidating thing, and there's no amount of schooling that can get them used to this. You have to run.
It's kind of like preparing for a test, and you do the test questions at home, and it seems very easy in your room, and then you get into a big room filled with other people, and the questions are a little bit different than you expected, and suddenly you're like, this isn't exactly what I'd prepared for here, because she's got not one wall, but 2 walls in front of her.
Well, yeah, and they're not seeing daylight. You know, that's the idea behind European horses being covered up. They don't see daylight. They come off the bridle, they relax. Then when they see daylight, they really sprint home. Well, this filly really never got daylight at any stage. Even here, she's still got horses in front of her, and to me, she ran spotty, but showed enough ability that you have to think. And he kind of here gave up. He wrapped up. He said, well, we're not going to get anything. I'm not going to beat her up. I think this was a very useful first race. Another horse, the experience factor is going to play big in her second start, and I think you'll see a market improvement because like not Sabrina Ballerina, the other filly of Barbie Stones, she saw a lot of situations in her first start, and that's worth how many workouts. You can't even put a number on it. I think she improves big second time.
And the other thing, and I think you'll agree with this on both of these horses, is they both broke a little slowly. Usually they break a little better in their second starts, and they break better in the second starts. They're not even going to find the same kind of traffic situations they found the first time.
Well, absolutely. Even if they don't show speed, they're not giving anything away at the break, and they're not going to be shuffled out of position.
Right. It'll be very interesting to watch both of these horses in their subsequent starts. Now we're going to move ahead towards Sunday's car, the 27th, and talk about the 3rd race, the Bertram F. Baumgart. Found this to be a fascinating race because Champion of the Nile's on the outside the pink. The horse we want to talk about is the eventual second-place finisher, Get Jets. I feel as though Jose Ortiz on Champion of the Nile rode his brother on Get Jets the whole way, knowing he was the horse he had to beat, but I think it may have cost him his best chance, but certainly Get Jets was unlucky.
Get Jets was unlucky, and post position played a big part in that for sure. But it's interesting, as you were saying it, when you go back and watch the replay again, you see Jose Ortiz looking over his left shoulder. Where's my brother at? Where is Get Jets? Obviously, he figured that was the horse to beat. And then he came down over and he said, now I'm going to hold this position and not allow him to go forward. I basically got my brother in a trick bag. That's fine if the horse on the lead isn't a quality horse and he comes back to you.
That's the problem. He failed to take into account how good Giant Surprise is, and by allowing him to go at 23-4 first quarter, he handed the race to him, and he took himself out of his strength, which is natural speed for Champion of the Nile. In doing so, though, Get Jets, who's a closer, is bottled up the whole way inside, and he's trying to close to a slow pace and do it against not just one good horse, but two good horses. And, for those that think that Jose and Arad might, aren't as competitive as they are, this is a good example of why that's not the case. Jose and Irad were clearly talking before the race. I'm going to beat you. No, I'm going to beat you. And they were very concerned. Jose, with helping his horse by hurting the chances of Irad's horse.
Yeah, no doubt.
In a fair way.
No, it was perfectly legal. And honestly, that's what good riders do. They try to compromise other guys' trips within the boundaries of the rules. That being said, there's still other horses involved, and we were talking off camera about Johnny Velasquez's ride on Sudden Surprise. Johnny is so good at subtly hurting horses or just coming out enough to impede horses' forward progress within the boundaries of the rules. Now, Get Jets, it was interesting when they picked it up the second quarter, it kind of swept him off his feet a little bit, and then he got hit with the kickback, because when a horse runs up close to another horse's hindquarters, it hits him in the chest. When those horses get away from it hits him in the face. It's a completely different experience for us. They'll climb, and he even changed leads 2 or 3 times around the turn, Get Jets. He's the horse, and I think this was a terrific race, by the way.
I totally agree.
Quality, chock full of quality.
Not a New York bred race. Just a good race.
Real good race. And Sudden Surprise, hey, he's undefeated, and he makes his own trips, and you can't discount the importance of that. But Get Jets is the horse that you got to think has maybe potentially the biggest future of this group.
I'm going to tell you something. This is a year you're supposed to be taking a chance with 2-year-old colts. We've got the Champagne this weekend. We've got the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, but not to disrespect the horse in California, because the Philly Songbird might be the best 2-year-old in the country.
Could be.
But their colts haven't appeared strong, and we're not seeing killers. At least they're going to the Breeders' Cup at this point. We saw a good maiden race we talked about a week ago.
Yeah.
If I had Get Jets, I'd be seriously considering the Breeders' Cup Juvenile with this horse. You only get one chance in life to run in that race.
Yeah, no doubt, and he definitely is a quality horse. And I think the California horses, to this point, have kind of exposed themselves that maybe they're not as good going further.
The colts, for sure.
The colts, that's
right
what I
now.
mean, the
At
colts.
least the ones that are going to the Breeders' Cup. Doesn't mean they're in maidens and such, just like here. But right now, this is a good year to take a chance. We got one more race, and it's the subsequent race to the one we just showed, the 4th race from Sunday the 27th. We want to talk about 2 horses. The big favorite, Sister Sophia, is the 2, but the 3 horse in here, Vicky's Dancer, who actually broke behind the 2, both broke a little slowly. Vicky's Dancer was incredibly unlucky here, and a lot of it happened because she broke a step slow, Richie.
Yeah, and you made a very good point before we went on. Sister Sophia is a deep closer. The slightly sluggish start probably affected her less than it did Vicky's Dancer, who would have been more tactical, more position. And now as the pace moderates and slows down, you see she gets jammed up in here and wind up stuck behind the eventual win of the 4. And I think, and we'll look at it in the stretch, that possibly Irad should have been a little more patient and stayed in behind the 4, because he's going to start to angle out looking for room, and then he's going to have to change back to where he began to begin with. And eventually, if he stayed on the fence, and believe me, it would have been difficult to do.
This is second guess. Yeah,
it would have been difficult to do. And
it's Monday morning quarterback.
No doubt. Sure. Listen, hindsight's 20/20, and it's easy for me to say sitting on the set in this chair and not out in the midst of it. But you see, the 4 is going to angle out a bit off the fence, and you see Irad's going to have to eventually come back into where he began originally. And eventually, the horse on the rail that was on the lead, Maggie's Freudian Slip, is off the rail enough that maybe that would have been the place to be. Again, very easy to say from
and
this
he's trying the right thing because he thinks he can get outside first. And it just feels a little bit for Irad like everything he did in this horse, he got unlucky. And this is a half an hour after riding Get Jets and feeling like he rode the best horse. So this was a frustrating half an hour period for Irad where everything works out badly. And here's what Richie's talking about as we take a look at the head-on.
Yeah, you can see she already angled out from... She was inside of the eventual winner, Uncle Southern. Now he's back. He went outside. Now he's back inside searching for room. And he's still, in his mind, wanting to go out. Now Sister Sophia's got momentum, so that option kind of closes up. And if you look down on the fence, there's a lot of space there. Again, his fate basically, or his hand was dealt off of the break. When the slow break kind of compromised the trip, and then nothing worked out from there. And it's so easy for someone to say what he should have done from this vantage point. I'm sure he would like that one over, and sometimes you just don't have a good day.
Right. This was just a bad period for him where he was a little unlucky, and also it was a slow pace. They went 22-2 and 45-3. You might think that's fast. It's not for a turf sprint, especially when the turf was very firm. Yeah. And keep in mind they came home in 23-2. So they went roughly the same final quarter as the second quarter, and it was that second quarter when he got in the most trouble behind horses. But I'm going to say something else. Vicky Stancer should have won the race. I still think that Sister Sophia ran the best race, because when you consider, and she compromises herself. She didn't have trouble. No. She does it to herself. But having to go 5 wide around the field when you're a deep closer and you've got to make up all that ground at a slow pace, it's virtually impossible to do, and she came pretty close.
Well, exactly. Gets beat a head and a neck and made that big run around the turn, around everybody. Very difficult thing to do.
And I think if they ran this race again, I think a lot of people's reaction was, I want Vicky's answer. She had the trouble. She should have won the race. And I might say, well, maybe the trip will work out better for Sister Sophia. Maybe the pace will be faster. Maybe somebody will go next time. And Sister Sophia, I think that she was unlucky by, it's her own fault that she was unlucky by her style. But I think she might have, in a funny way, run the best race.
I agree with that, but she's always going to be pace dependent, and that's what you got to look into.
I agree, especially when you're taking a short price horse. We can always use your help. Trips and Traps at NyraInc.com.